I'm Martin Benjamin. I am the director of the Kamusi Project, which is an international NGO that builds language technology for as many languages as possible in the public interest. We've been, of course, quite concerned with the situation in Ukraine, especially with the people who have been having to flee Ukraine to countries around Europe. The people who are fleeing Ukraine are going to places where they don't speak the language, and the people who are hosting them don't speak their language. This makes it extremely difficult for them to deal with emergency services, healthcare, finding housing, finding jobs, getting their kids into school. Ukrainian is quite an underserved language in language technology. The existing translation resources are really quite meager. Translation technology tends to be provided by for-profit corporations, and Ukrainian has not been a lucrative language for investment in these sorts of technologies that would be extremely useful exactly at this moment. The system that we've built and implemented for many other languages at Kamusi is really well suited for Ukrainian, for going from language to language at a very precise level of meaning, from Ukrainian to the languages of the places the people are going. We've been able to team up with two Ukrainian firms, a technology firm and a language firm, that are going to be able to work with us to develop with us an emergency vocabulary that we believe will be extremely useful for the refugees in the places they find themselves, talking to the people they find themselves talking to. In this video, you'll meet the heads of those companies, and they'll explain to you what it is that they do and the situation they find themselves in. After you hear from Senya and from Natalia, then I also explain more about exactly what it is that the project is, and hope that you find this whole thing interesting. Hopefully it will be interesting enough to generate the support that we need in order to make this happen, because we can be of use to the people who are facing such big language difficulties in the communications they find themselves in right now.
Okay, about the refuge tech. We started a company in 2016. Uh, from the very beginning, it was remote cooperation with our employees. We were sitting in Zaporizhia. After about half a year, we started an office there, but still our company always was on remote basis, which really helped us during the COVID times. And having experience of remote working is also something that is necessary currently because all of our workers, mostly 80%, um, change their place to the safest part of Ukraine. Let's call it like this. Yeah. Mostly because our employees like 50% are male, so they cannot leave the country, so they continue working in Ukraine. um, our main focus as a domain we work with is educational technology. It started about 4 years ago when we had a chance to work with the universities for our first project in science. Let's call it like this. Was the neurobiological framework for actual neurobiologists. And this was something that really we got interested in just because you understand that you can make an impact during your work. Our main services are web and mobile development. We work with different range of technologies, so mainly to achieve the goal of the product. The moment we continue working, we really we do not struggle. We are pretty adaptive because people are adaptive, to be honest. So we continue working. We didn't lost any of our clients. Our clients are very supportive, and we really appreciate it. Even those who have finished working with us come back to support us, to give us some amount of work to continue, because they were afraid that, well, it's a little bit risky, that people just would not willing to work with our company because of the war. But I am pretty happy with the fact that it's totally vice versa. Then we understood that it's not something that's gonna last for like a week, so we have to get used to it. We have to continue working. We have to support Ukrainian economy, support our employees and our company. Currently, all of our 25 employees are working full-time. So yeah, and sometimes we allow reducing working time a little bit if it's possible, just to have ability to volunteer. to help with refugees, because some of our workers are in Zaporizhia, and Zaporizhia currently has a lot of people from Mariupol, from the south cities of Ukraine, which are currently occupied.
What countries are other people in right now?
Poland, Slovakia, and Australia. But a lot of our employees decided to stay home, or they left for a couple of weeks and then decided to go back to Ukraine.
I'm Jérôme Baton. I'm currently acting as the data guru at Camusi. I worked on the model for the online dictionary, and I am also the author of this book. Neo4j is a database engine from the NoSQL family and the Graph subfamily.
So we are a task force translation company. We actually we have been working since 2011. We've always been into complicated or sophisticated types of translation, and but we were very concentrated on the internal market, on Ukraine, and worked with international organizations and international projects and global companies who were doing business in Ukraine. And when our country suffered from war, so it appeared to all the situation emerged. We, of course, were forced to save the business because it suffered significantly. We lost around half of the business, I would say. A lot of Ukrainian people fled to European countries, and since then, a lot of demand is present in European countries regarding Ukrainian language and everything around Ukrainian language. So we as a translation company are in a good position to help in this case. That's why what we do now is that we look for projects and for clients where Ukrainian language is needed, and they are outside of Ukraine. So surely we understand that Ukrainian refugees, they need help with language issues because in our country, historically, people from universities, people from big cities, they usually speak English, but majority of people, they either do not speak foreign language at all, or their level of English, for example, English as the most widespread global language, is not sufficient to communicate themselves. That's why, since we started to look for projects here in Europe, we already worked on several projects of websites localization for refugees, for Ukrainian refugees specifically. Something on just general information about country they just ended up leaving, or about vaccination, which is obligatory in European countries, and so on. So various materials. Our main team still remains in Ukraine, in various parts of Ukraine, mainly Western Ukraine, but also in Kiev. Again, this is because a lot of, the majority of our team just wanted to stay, but they could leave because translators are historically more feminine profession, less men, more women here, at least in our company, but they just didn't want to go. But several members of the team are located outside. I'm in Germany, more people in Czech Republic, but again, main core team remains in Ukraine, and they keep working despite sometimes being forced to work from bomb shelters. And despite these everyday sirens, they have still almost everywhere, even in Kiev, which is now considered to be one of the safest places to be. We do have 53 in-house team. So 53 people in Ukraine for whom we actually have to arrange work and projects to live and feed their families. Very often I see here and communicate here in Germany, where I'm currently located, with refugees who live in a sport gym of a school, of a gymnasium, and they often need to go to the state authorities to arrange this or that issues of their future accommodation or insurance, medical insurance, or some utilities payments and so on. And each time they need to go to this authority when no one speaks English, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, no one speaks Ukrainian and even Russian. Then they need to take an interpreter with them. And it's always a significant issue because all interpreters here in Germany seems to be like volunteer people who just volunteer. And of course, a lot of refugees and less volunteers, interpreters are available. So this is becoming a more and more important issue. They cannot deal on their own with their issues. I mean, the refugees. And volunteers are not, not available every day ad hoc. We already were requested to translate several websites and materials and some flyers and summaries of what's going on for refugees here in Germany. That's why local businesses and local authorities are desperately trying to arrange some language environment for those people who arrive. But it's like, it requires a lot of effort, a lot of money, and a lot of resources which are not really available. Refugees have their own documents with them which require translation. It is not translated. It cannot be submitted, of course, without translation. So it all makes their life more complicated. And also at schools, children of refugees, they need to go to school, but they don't know language at all. Of course, they don't know German here in Germany, for example. And that's why the authorities had to either set up a special class with only Ukrainian children in the class and a teacher who speaks Ukrainian as well as German, which is, of course, not very common combination, yeah. Or they sent these children to a proper German school where they don't understand anything, they cannot make friends, they have significant integration difficulty. And to be honest, I don't know what happens if these children stay longer. And starting from September, they need to go like not on integration course, but to a proper school. And it will cause more problems for them, unfortunately, as I see it for now.
The Ukraine project, obviously the war in Ukraine has been devastating for so many people, and so many people have had to flee. The problem that we are observing people have been facing has been this lack of, once they leave the Ukraine, they have lack of access to any of the services that they need in a language that they really understand. There are some people who understand English, and some people in the countries they're going to who understand English. So when you have that sort of intersection, there's an ability to communicate. But if they're going to Poland, for example, and 80% of Poles or more don't speak English at any level, and 80% of the Ukrainians arriving don't speak English, then you've got a very small intersection and a very large need for the ability to go back and forth between languages. And this has really been affecting the ability of the refugees to make their way through as they've been, they've gotten across the border, but now what do they do? How do they get a job? How do they get medical services? How do they put their children in school?
I can, observe how mother of my best friend is behaving here in Portugal when the person she communicates with doesn't know English, and her English level is also very low. So she just tried to explain everything in gestures, and sometimes it helps. And she really is pretty successful in getting the result using this non-verbal resources, let's call it like this. I agree with the problem for students, for kids, because it also depends on person. My son is not the person who is going to communicate when he doesn't understand anything. So, and for sure, having all the aspects as medical insurance, all the documents said, is also a problem here. In Portugal, as I understand, and the main aspect that probably worries me is about having a job here locally, when the person cannot speak Portuguese, for example, the local language, and unfortunately, even having English level, if it's okay, with the person has some experience speaking English to foreigners, but unfortunately it doesn't help with currently in this local environment when you try to find a job to communicate with local people.
State authorities, they just open Google Translate on their computers and try to to show their screens, that we can read some most difficult parts, but we cannot understand from communicating to each other. That was my own experience as well. I do not speak proper German, but when I went to some meeting in a state authorities without an interpreter, because no interpreters were available, so I went myself and I relied on my own knowledge of German. It obviously it was not sufficient, and then this person from state authority, he just initiated using Google Translate, so it was awkward, and it was very long. It took a long time. It could be like it could take 5 minutes, but instead we had 20 minutes struggling to understand each other.
It was my first time experience of using Google Translator, because I have to talk with my neighbor lady, and she only speaks Portuguese. I only speak English and Ukrainian and Russian. So yeah, well, we got each other, but yeah, as Natalia said, it took about 20 minutes to solve very pretty simple questions, just because she's trying to type and I'm trying to understand, and yeah, it's not something that can be really used every day, to get the result of communicating with people.
You clearly do not enjoy this. It's not
For sure
something you want to repeat again. Yeah. I also very much believe in some specific terminology which we use, and it should be like in a specific tool, not only Google Translate, which knows no context and just mixes things up. Then it could help to understand each other better, for sure.
Yeah, the design is quite unique. Normally, what you have in some sort of machine translation program, you have something like Google Translate, and they have a bunch of things. They have a set of knowledge about parallel text between English and language X, and they have a set of knowledge about parallel text between English and language Y, and they make a certain number of guesses on this side, they make a certain number of guesses on that side, and the result is chaotic. What we have done is we don't treat words as things based on spelling. We treat words based on as things based on meaning. So if you have shot, S-H-O-T, what we're doing is saying that there's one thing that means a shot in the arm, another thing that means a shot that a photographer takes, another that means a shot that you get at a bar, a shot of alcohol, another meaning a shot from a gun. Those are all different things, and the spelling doesn't matter. What matters is what that concept is in Ukrainian, what that concept is in Czech, what that concept is in any other language. And then once you know what the concept is, you can just go from what we have in one language to what we have in the other language without needing to use that English transition, and you can get that quite precisely, quite accurately. So we've already done that for general vocabulary for 44 different languages, all lined up. We have the data ready for many other languages in a already pre-aligned system, and ways to bring that in for other languages and more terms. Additionally, here is we need to figure out the vocabulary, get the vocabulary that's particularly needed in the urgent situation. People don't need to know terms for playing football in this situation, but they do need to know terms for going to the hospital. So we've got we've got things ready to go, ready to be lined up, and then what we now need to do is put that in. Now, there is one large problem, is that Ukrainian has not been one of the languages in our data set, so we need to get those Ukrainian terms quickly. Problem number two is that the Russian that we have is coming from a fairly messy data set, so we need to change that data set with one which we have, which is much cleaner. Problem number three, we've never been able to get German. Our technology is available for German. German just has never had an open data set that's available that's aligned with all the other languages, which is unfortunate. But we can, if we're able to get the funding to get the Germans to be able to do that, put German in. That's important because there are a lot of the refugees have moved, are finding themselves in Germany. So hopefully we can do that as well. This has actually been something that we've been talking about for a long time at Camusi for things that we can do in general for languages, for refugee situations and other emergency situations, because we know there are going to be emergencies. We know there's going to be a lot of language contact, a lot of language mixing in the event of the emergencies, whether it's a war situation, a refugee situation, or an earthquake or a hurricane, or other sorts of natural disasters. What we never know is what languages are going to be intersecting. The model that we built at Camusi, where you put in the terms you need in language A, and then you put in the terms you need in all sorts of other languages, and when they have to come in contact, they intersect at the right point, at a meaning-based level, is especially suited for this emergency encounter where you don't know, are you going to have Ukrainian and Polish? Are you going to have Kurdish and Bulgarian, or what sort of unusual pairs that are not served in any other way are going to be needed at an instantaneous moment. So we've had for a long time this idea in the pipeline, but have not been able to find the funder interest to get it launched. But we're really at this point, because of the urgency, the extreme urgency of millions of Ukrainians now trying to get their way through other European countries, which speak such a different, a broad diversity of languages, have decided that this is the moment to really try to get this system going, at least for Ukrainian, at least for the sorts of vocabulary that people are discovering in the moment, the sorts of access to social services, medical services that they would really need. The plan is we've got a lot of things already ready, right? We've got the database that Jerome has designed is in good working state. You can see it, you can use it online between the 44 languages that are there. It's not that difficult to add things to the system. We do need, in order for the translators to put words into the system in a quick and efficient way, is a certain amount of technological development that still needs to happen. This is where I'm really happy that we were able to make contact and enter into an agreement with a Ukrainian software development company that is experienced in the sort of technology that we're doing, and that is, of course, needing work in order to be able to keep themselves going and support themselves and their families. But a key thing is that they know what they're doing, and they are passionate and motivated about getting this done. So building those sort of input and aspects that have been lingering, that we haven't been able to get implemented for a while, layered on top of the things that we have been able to implement. The other thing that I'm very happy that we're able to do is we have connected with a Ukrainian translation company. This is actually run by somebody who I met at a conference from the World Health Organization in Geneva. So I have a large amount of confidence in the services this company is going to be able to provide. And again, these are people some of whom have fled Ukraine and are in various other places, and then some of whom are still in Ukraine, but they should be able to work very quickly. The quality of what they'll be able to do will be quite good. So as soon as we can give them the set of data that we need terms for, they'll be able to start putting the terms together. And if we can throw a lot of people on the project all at once, we could get this done in just a matter of weeks. We'll see when we can start, how much we can put into the program, and the more we can put in, the quicker we can get it done, and the quicker we can have it on apps that then can be used by people on both the Ukrainian side, the refugees, and and on the side of the people on the service side, the people they need to communicate with, whether that's their landlords or housing agencies or any other person. It's all going to be on mobile devices. We've got one mobile app that works very nicely already for basic dictionary uses. So if we can target it to categories specific to what they need to find quickly, we'll be able to do that again quickly with the software team.
Do we have a time frame for this project?
Yeah, we are ready to start yesterday. As soon as I know that I can pay the people who are going to be able to do the work, they can get started, and we can get started making things happen. So that could, really could literally be tomorrow.
About funding, Camusi is a non-profit. We need funding for the cost of hosting and for sometimes some hardware. But we need money now for paying the teams that will work on the translations. Martin, a quick word about how people can give funds to Camusi?
I actually hadn't been thinking of this as a general fundraising thing. I was more thinking of this as something for big donors, but that will
yes, I understand,
right.
But like you and me, there is a lot of people that are interested in the greater good.
We're looking for major sources of funding as right now. Hopefully we'll be able to get funding from European sources that understand the urgency and have big resources, but we're also very open to donations from people who understand the needs, but maybe have only personal resources to help out. If you have those, you can go to the Camusi website, camusi.org. There is a link to how to donate to the project through the page. And if you just specify somewhere, I think on the PayPal donation thing, that it's for the Ukrainian project, we will target your money right there.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Jerome. That was so much better to talk to you than to talk to that camera.